don't take time to look at it through other people's eyes. Take some time and reflect on what you believe in your soul. Cause that is the key to life. You gotta let the negativity go.
Hello and welcome to What the Fox podcast with your two hosts, Lindsay Fox and Amber Ross. First and foremost, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah. Happy New
We
Year.
made it to 2023.
And we made it to officially the 1 year anniversary of the podcast.
That's right. Happy anniversary to us, Amber. That's right. Cheers. Happy New Year to everyone and happy anniversary to us. How could I possibly forget that? I'm so glad that you did a little call out to us. We earned that.
Absolutely.
So in typical fashion for New Year's, we definitely want to discuss what our year in review look like and what our year forward is going to pan out to be. And before we get started with all of that, we just want to remind you that our sponsorship for the podcast is by a wonderful company called Therapy Appointment. You can find everything about them at therapyappointment.com. If you are wanting to kick off your new year by finding a therapist near you, please go to therapyappointment.com. And if you are a clinician that is in your own practice and you want to have a really amazing electronic medical records system, they are phenomenal. I love their software. It is so easy to use. And no, this is not like me just going on and on and on about it. I mean, I've actually used it and it's phenomenal.
Hey, it's like anything else. You find the perfect pair of jeans and you're going to talk about it. You find the perfect shade of lipstick and you're going to talk about it.
Honestly, though, they really do provide so many like quick little detail oriented things that a lot of companies make you pay extra each month for. And they don't do that. I mean, it's just, I'm honestly blown away how much they give away. So, all right, that's it. I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you, Therapy Appointment.
Yep. So for New Year's, Amber was actually who initially introduced this idea of like choosing a word of the year into my life. Like I had never done this. This was like a tradition on her part. And I want to carry it through for 2023 as well. But Amber, can you share more about this whole word of the year thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started doing this in 2019. And 2019 was like a wicked crazy year for my family. And it was just a way to set an intention for the year, because what we've talked about a lot on this podcast is where you put your focus, the things that you think about often, the things that you prioritize are the things that develop in your life, right? Those are the things where you start to see patterns, you start to see trends, and you start to actually see growth. So I chose in 2019, it was something that a group of my peers were doing. They did a word of the year workshop. We sat together for like 2 hours and, worked through a workbook to say, what does this next year? What do we want out of this next year? What do we want to prioritize? How are we going to grow? How are we going to invest in ourselves? So ever since 2019, that's something that I've actively participated in. I've selected a word and it's kind of been my guiding force for the year. And it's that check and balance process to say, is this activity or is this person or is this thing, like, does it fit with what I'm trying to do? Is it in alignment? Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's like we work together or something.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, are you in alignment with this word that you've set out with a level of intention to kind of focus on for the year?
And it's been a great way to be present, to actually live my life instead of just going through the motions, or just because I get swept up in to-do list. I get swept up in what's needed of me. I get swept up in not me.
Not Amber.
So having that word and setting that intention for the year has been my way of saying, okay, like, you matter too. Your needs matter and they deserve to have a focus on them.
So it's like a word of mindfulness for the year. I love it. And also, I think as I was hearing you say that, when we both spit out the word alignment, I kind of was thinking, is it possible that the word should shift over the year, where maybe you're realizing, and my answer, of course, is like, yes, because everything is flexible. But I mean, Because the way I think of it is maybe in January, the word that we choose, maybe whenever we do that like check in during the summer, it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the right word choice. And I say this because I get so hung up on semantics. I feel like words
Yeah.
really carry so much weight, and maybe you find a new word that like really hones in on what you actually meant.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, and
okay to switch it
it's
up.
actually that's a good point that you bring up, because something I forget to mention to people as we're doing the word of the year stuff is I have a regular checkpoint with myself, like every 3 months, because I do a personal quarterly review for me. And like that's
This
my
does not
check-in.
surprise me at all.
Listen, I started doing it when I was in sales because we had quarterly business reviews. And I
Sure.
was like,
Yep.
why do we not do a quarterly personal review? Like that just makes sense. So
I mean,
I
you are a
review that.
very you're a highly goal-oriented person. You like
Yeah.
list and all that stuff. I operate on a very different I operate just in a very different way as a whole. But yes,
Yeah.
whatever the method is to your madness, whatever works, whatever checks and balances work for you, just checking in with yourself is hella important.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that we miss out on, right? Because the start of the year, it's like, this is so exciting. We get to do all the things and set all the intentions. And then, 4 months later, the sparkle has worn off. We're all
Girl,
just
I was
like,
thinking February.
February,
I'm like, give it 1 month. It's like, what
give it 30 days.
resolution? Jim,
Yeah.
what Jim? We're gonna go hit up Taco Tuesday and get some margaritas while we're at it.
I will continue to hit up Taco Tuesday and enjoy the margaritas. That is part of my New Year's resolution. No.
Hey, that's
I,
okay.
I
So what
just a
was
little
your
bit.
I was gonna say, I think for today's episode, I really think that it's important for us to talk about our our stuff
Yeah.
because I know frankly a lot of times in this podcast I try to talk about things more objectively and leave my personal stuff out of it, but when
Hmm.
we're kind of doing the year in review, I do think it's important to share this stuff because I'm a human first, and then my line of work comes secondary or tertiary. It's not who I am as a person. And I feel like that year in review and kind of reflection and how I want to move forward, it's really important that I separate, you know, who I am from what I do.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
kind of where I thought this would be interesting because you're pretty open about sharing about your home life and stuff like that. And we come from different walks of life. So I actually want to start by just asking you, what was your year for 2022? And then what is your year for 2023?
My word of the year for both.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
So
I don't know what I just said, but thank you for picking up what I
I
was putting
got
down.
you. I
Okay.
got it. I understand.
Thank you.
Yes. So
Thank you.
2022 for me, that was a really pivotal year. I selected the word balance because I felt very strongly pulled to kind of regroup, reset, and find a balance in work and home and friends and
Mm.
all of the areas of my life that were in constant conflict.
Well, especially after the pandemic, when all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff got merged for so many of us who transitioned to like going into an office or having a work life outside of the house to then merging all of it into one place. That
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Balance was hella needed, I
Yeah,
think, for everyone.
it was. And it was such a good shift for me because it changed the way I managed my calendar. It changed the way I managed my day. Like it impacted every area of my life in good ways. So then for this year, uh, thanks to Lindsay, I was able to settle on my word of the year. It's so funny. In the time that I have done this, my word always arrives for me and it's
Mhm.
not a problem. I do my workbook, I do my reset, I do my reflection, and I'm like, oh, this is what we need for the new year, Amber. And this year it was like, we have no idea what we need, Amber. I had all of these words and there was no trend between them. There was nothing that tied them together. And I'm just like, what am I missing? So,
Mm.
as Lindsay and I sat together to sort of reflect and talk through a mini year in review, it was very clear. And Lindsay pointed it out to me that my
Oh
word of the year for
God.
2023 needed to be trust because I need to lean into
Mm.
trusting myself. I need to lean into trusting my abilities. And I also need to learn or relearn to trust other people because I
Yeah.
am one of the people who I worked outside of the house. I was constantly surrounded by people. I enjoyed being surrounded by people. I never met a stranger. Like I would strike up a conversation with any human who had breath. And I find myself now like I don't know how to people. I have forgotten how to people. And I think
Yeah.
trust is just a huge component of that. And
Yeah.
just kind of refiguring out what I'm supposed to be doing.
I can totally get on board with that too. I mean, that whole I don't know how to people
I don't
thing
know how to people.
really that while I feel I've made significant progress in that space, but I would say particularly, being in lockdown for all of 2020 and then being in a different version of lockdown during 2021 between my dog's health issues and my divorce
Mm-hmm.
issues and all this stuff. I mean, that I really felt like when 2022 arrived, I was like, and after Lulu passed in late April, it was really my first chance of going out and trying to go out again. It was
And trying
May
to
of 22.
people.
Yes. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't think I know how to do small talk. And granted, I've never felt great at small talk, but in this moment earlier this year or last year, I definitely felt like I think I forgot how to people. I don't know if I know how to
But it's like
socialize
you
and not
can't
be
necessarily.
awkward.
Yes, the
Because I'm
awkwardness
so
is
used to
real.
listening. Like I'm so
Mm,
used to listening to people talk. And I think that's where kind of this podcast has been sort of a fun outlet because it's like
yeah.
I get to chit chat. And this is like an element of social gathering or, whatever, whether
Yeah.
it's with you or our guest speakers, like I really love it. And, but whenever it comes to like going out and socializing, it just took me a little bit of an adjustment because like I
Hmm.
was like, oh my gosh, I haven't been out. And then I'd go to restaurants only to find out they had closed down. They didn't even
Oh
exist
yeah.
anymore. You're like, oh, wow, a lot's happened since I was in Kansas.
Right.
Like,
We're not
Dorothy,
in
we're not in
Kansas
Kansas
anymore.
anymore.
Good grief. It's definitely a little bit of shell shock, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it's difficult and it's
Yeah.
also an area of growth and opportunity and it you have to take time to realize shit this is hard and also
Hmm.
it's worth doing the thing, it's worth
Of
relearning,
course.
and
Of
part of
course.
part of that is just admitting crap I don't really know what I'm doing, so as I'm awkward just like bear with me.
And the interesting thing is like usually when those moments happen, we're in our head about it. It's not that other people
Oh
are
yeah,
necessarily noticing it. It's like you're the one noticing it because you have your own internal dialogue hijacking everything. It's not that the people on the outside necessarily notice it. Um,
absolutely. So what about you, Lindsay? What was
yes.
2022's word?
Oh man, my word was flow. Why,
You
you
did a
may
good
ask?
job with that. Yeah. Go ahead. Why did you pick that
Uh,
word?
because everything was a freaking shit show.
That's fair.
Everything was a shit show, and it became abundantly clear that everything that I thought I could control was totally out of my control. And more than ever did I need to learn flow. More than
Yeah.
ever did I need to just sit in that shit and be like, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I need to just kind of roll with it um, in every way possible. 2022 was by far one of the hardest years of my life.
Mm,
Like that I could I mean, and granted, there's been a number of hard years, but 2022 in particular was a life-defining year because it was filled with so many amazing highs and then
hmm.
so many like jaw-dropping, rug pull out from under your feet lows.
Yeah.
Um, that just left me in the space of like checking in with myself saying, what am I supposed to learn from this?
Yeah.
What am I being shown here that I need to learn or heal or hone in on for myself in this experience? And that word flow just kept coming up over and over and over and over again. And I learned a lot. I feel like 2022 is a time that I learned a lot, a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think you learned a lot about yourself. You learned a lot about other
Yeah.
people. You learned
Mm.
a lot about taking care of a dog instead of a human dog.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yep. So my Lulu passed late April, and then I, without any plan in the world to do this, got encouraged to rescue a dog that was going to go to a kill shelter. So that's my new dog
Mm.
now. But just on top of that, I experienced suicide loss in
Mhm.
2022. Excuse me, 2022. I experienced suicide loss. I lost also like four super close people to me,
Yeah.
um, to other things that were going on. And whenever I say loss, I mean like relationships, friendships,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And a lot of that was because I was getting to this space where I became very protective over my personal peace. And
Mhm.
I started to realize, um, I just, how sometimes you just outgrow people.
Yeah.
Um, and it's nothing negative toward them. There's nothing, nothing like that. It's just, I got to that point and realizing, you know what, I have to shift gears and appreciate the season that
Yeah.
existed between us. And the season has now closed, and I've got to move forward in a different direction. I wish you nothing but peace, harmony, happiness, all the good things. But I
Yeah.
think just really going in that flow too was huge. Learning not to chase, beg, force,
Mm.
impose my will on, or over explain myself. It just really was about being present with exactly where I was in that moment of time and not fighting it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's super powerful. And it's something that I think made 2022 exactly what it was and exactly what it needed to be. Now,
Mm-hmm.
moving out of 2022, what is your 2023 word?
Oh, this word just came so easily to me. I was like, it's absolutely going to be freedom.
Yes.
Let freedom
Yes,
ring.
absolutely, my friend.
Yes, because this year, so I can't remember if I said this in a previous recording or not, but for those of y'all who do not know, in April of 2023, it will have been 3 years that I've been trying to get a divorce. And the trial was back in October of 2022, and we are still waiting for the judge to rule on everything. We're still waiting for the divorce to get finalized and to get approved. And so that was something I had my heart set on for
Mm.
concluding in 2022. And now I know without a shadow of a doubt it's going to be over in 2023. And I'm just so ready to move forward in the best way possible and to embrace every bit of my personal freedom.
I love that. And I love that for you. I look forward to getting to celebrate your next chapter, your next stage, your next opportunities. And also, not but, and we're going to go ahead and march into those next chapters and stages and opportunities while we await that decision.
Oh, 100%. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing that was so important about flow, I felt for 22 was so many decisions. Holy cow, there were so many decisions that I kept putting on hold because I was like, I just want my divorce to get finalized first, and then I'll
Mhm.
look at this, then I'll look at that. And then, all these opportunities started to come up where I was like, Lindsay, you can't stop living your life just because this is not resolved. I mean, we almost passed up this podcast sponsorship as a result of all this.
Yeah.
I mean, there were just amazing there were amazing opportunities and things that came about where I said, listen, I can't stop living my life because the legal system sucks. Like,
Yeah.
um, and so really for this year, it's honing in on just embracing every bit of personal freedom and how far I've come and just relishing in it and celebrating who I am today. I'm super thrilled about it.
Yeah. And I think as you said that, I was just remembering our experience from the end of the year. So last week to
Mhm.
say, like, Lindsay invited me to participate in a burning bowl ceremony. And I had not heard of a burning bowl ceremony. I did not know what to expect. Um,
But I'm proud of you for
two,
saying yes and going out of your comfort
yeah.
zone.
Well, and so that's another part of my goals for 2022. I learned from a friend. She's a friend of mine and my husband's. Every year, she sets an intention to have 12 new experiences each year, and they can be big, small,
Oh, that's
just
fun.
right. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
like one a month.
oh,
I love that.
Right. And some months you don't get one, so you do two the next month, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be so structured. So I went into it and I tried to process it the way that she does. So I didn't outline like normal Amber would say, okay, here are the 12 new things that we're going to do this year. And here is the timeline. And here is, right.
That
Okay.
stresses me the fuck out.
Right. So in an
Love you.
effort, right, in an effort to find balance, I said, you know what, Amber, we're going to do this differently. We're going to say, yes, we will have at least 12 new experiences this year, but we are not going to put time limitations. We're not going to put activity limitations. We're just going to
Yeah.
let things roll, let them flow, and see what happens.
Hmm.
And as I was sitting down last week, I'm doing my like end of year review or year in review. And I realized I had like 20 new experiences last year.
That's
So,
awesome.
as a direct result of not putting any limitations around it, I got to experience so many new things. And
What do
the
you
Burning
know?
Bowl, right?
What do you
Crazy.
know? You stop, yeah, stop put limitations and the sky's the limit.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. So, getting to do that Burning Bowl ceremony was just an amazing opportunity because I got to experience a lot of new things. I got to actually do group meditation in person with other people. That is
Yeah.
not something that I have done because I started meditating in
Oh, the
2020. So the
pandemic.
pandemic was when I started meditating.
Yes.
So to be with other people like that
Wow. I hadn't thought about
was
that for you.
right. So
Yeah.
that was a cool experience. So that was just like one aspect of it.
Could
I
you,
had
I
already
have to
done,
ask,
go ahead.
could just a quick question about the meditation. Because I didn't really piece all that together. When you meditated with us in the group setting, could you feel an energy shift or could you feel anything different in the environment of being in the room in a shared space with other people?
It was extremely different because there was so much energy. Like I am used to being by myself. So I have
Yes.
like whatever energy exists in my home, which is a
Yes.
lot. Okay. I have kids, I have a dog, I have, like, but being in a room with, I don't know, there were what, six women, I think,
Yeah.
something
It was
like
a
that.
small group. Yep.
It was a small group, which was really nice, but the energy and the intention and the enthusiasm and just the strength that existed in that room,
Yeah.
it was a little overpowering for me at first, and it made
Yeah.
it more of a challenge for me to find my quiet and find like that
Yeah.
meditation
Yeah.
state. Um, but man, I enjoyed it, and it was something that I'm like, oh, like this is something that we could do because that was the one thing that I was worried about going into that event because I cheated. I pulled up the event to figure out exactly what to expect because it is
You
who I am as a
guys,
person.
Amber actually read what the event was about, whereas my ass just saw, oh, it's a burn bowl ceremony on New Year's or whatever, and I was like, Amber, this was like well prior to like a month of it even happening. I was like,
Oh
Amber, let's
yeah.
go, and I didn't have you guys. I didn't even read the details of it
No, we signed up
because
in November and you were like, "Hey, this yoga studio is doing this thing. We should do it." And I was like, "Yeah, like cool.
yeah.
That sounds great."
And what I didn't even realize until we were about to walk out the door on Friday, this was not New Year's Eve, the day before New Year's
But
Eve.
yeah, New
Yeah,
Year's Eve.
right. And I didn't even realize until we were walking out the door when Amber's like, "Hey, Lens, did you get your yoga mat?" And I was like, "What? We're doing yoga?" Because I literally thought it was just going to be like a meditation and then writing and releasing and burning. And she's like, no, did you read the thing? There's like restorative yoga as a part of this.
And I love that she included restorative yoga,
Yeah,
that releasing meditation prior to opening up for the journaling and the burning bowl. Because for me, I think it would have been hard to walk in there and just be in the right mindset to do the journal
yeah,
and to release the things. And I think being able
right.
to ease my body into it, being able to ease my mind into it,
Mm,
and just really forget what was outside the door and
yeah.
be in that space and present in that moment. It was just, I mean, it was amazing.
I totally agree with you. I thought it was incredibly powerful. And for those who are interested in coming along to my retreat in Sedona later this year, FYI, I will be hosting a retreat. It is 4 days in Sedona, Arizona in late April, but there will be a burn bowl ceremony on one of the
Mm.
evenings of that as well, just for us to all release all the things to start new. But I will definitely agree with you, Amber, that yoga, that restorative yoga just really helped balance out my body to allow my mind to just sort of be free and present.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the beauty of yoga as well. It really does help release a lot of that stored stress and trauma in the body, in a way that just felt so cleansing. And then to toss that shit in the fire felt good too.
Yeah, I felt much lighter when we left. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
felt my heart felt lighter, my shoulders felt lighter. I felt like I was standing taller. I'm like, wow, that was just very
But let's
enlightening. And just what?
I'm just thinking, wait, full disclosure, guys. Were we feeling lighter because we also had tequila before going to restorative yoga?
We did do that. I do think the tequila had worn off by then
Oh
because that was like
God.
2 hours. But I will say going into yoga with a little bit of tequila was fantastic.
Girl, I
And
was
like
struggling. I was like,
that
you
was the
guys,
pickled chips. That was not the tequila. That was the pickled
y'all, we
chips.
went to a local place like right across the street from this place, and we agreed to have one drink and dinner prior to us going to this event that I was not mentally prepared to engage in yoga for. And
Mm-hmm.
we had like greasy pickle chips, a burger, and a margarita. And
Yeah.
then proceeded to go to the yoga studio to, cleanse
The
ourselves.
heartburn was real because I had the buffalo chicken wrap. So like I think I told Lindsay, I'm like that first downward dog. I was a little afraid. I felt a little bit of fear that I was going to embarrass myself and everyone else.
Oh my
Oh.
gosh, it was very funny, and all I could taste was pickled chips and tequila. And I'm like, I feel like we did this restorative burn bowl thing completely wrong. I'm pretty sure we were supposed to do the first part last.
Yeah,
But
probably. That probably would have been the right time. But then we would
yeah.
have been eating at like 9 o'clock at night. I'm not a
Yeah,
fan of
it's
that.
okay.
But
I'm still thrilled that we did it. I loved it. I felt
yes.
like it was incredibly restorative as a whole, and it really just it just set the mood for me, at least in terms of entering New Year's Eve and through the weekend. I have been so hella productive. I feel like I've gotten all my stuff up to speed, and I just feel like clean and refreshed
Hmm.
entering into this week.
I think that's wonderful. I think our weekend's been a little bit busier. So full disclosure on my side, I did all of my year in review stuff in one day on Friday. So I have been working to unpack multiple layers of that
Mm.
review and multiple avenues because Eric and I did our vision hike that morning. And that's where we've talked about on the podcast before. My husband and I go on a hike. This year was 5 miles. And we just talk about a couple of key things. And Lindsay, I shared them with you just because it helps me to have prompts and ideas to get my
Yes.
brain moving.
Also, just
Um,
for our listeners, yes, you heard Amber correctly. She and her husband hiked 5 miles on Friday and then proceeded to join me in my shenanigans of saying, let's go eat, drink, be merry, and then do some burn bowl shit that she's never tried.
Yeah,
So,
it was an amazing day, but it was
yeah,
also a
it
very
was.
emotionally charged day.
Yeah,
Like
I was gonna say you crammed so much in that day, but I was
I
very
did.
lucky and thankful to spend the last half of it with you. But I'd love
Yeah,
to
and
hear
I
what happened on the vision hike.
the vision hike was a lot of fun. And it's always nice to get on the same page because we have two young children. It's very challenging for us to have like any kind of serious conversation or any conversation that is meaningful on a normal day-to-day
Of
basis because
course, without
yeah,
interruptions. Yeah.
there's just a lot going on. And my poor ADD brain does not allow for all of that to happen all at once and stay on track. Right. So every
Yeah.
year we set that goal to go on a hike, and it's somewhere between, after Christmas and New Year's, like the first week of the year. Um, and we have general prompts like things that brought us joy this year, things that were painful, things that we're grateful for, things that we want to do more of in the new year, things we want to do less of in the new year, anything we need to release walking into the new year. And that one I actually added this year, just based on conversations with you, Lindsay. I was like, you know what? That's something we should talk about. Like, what do we not want to carry with us? What do we want to just leave in 2022? And it's just, a 5-mile hike took us just under 2 hours, and we just kind of talked and walked because our brains work better if we are in motion. And it's like,
I feel that's the case for a lot of people. As a side note, just because I'm a big proponent of like nature therapy, y'all. I just feel like taking a good solid forest bath and walking outside, it just helps cleanse all the stuff around us and helps our head get a little unscrambled.
Absolutely. And it allowed us to talk about ways we want to change the way we parent our kids, ways that we want to change the way we show up for each other as partners, trips that we want to take in the new year, things that we don't want to do in the new year or we don't want to allow space for. So it's a good reset so that we walk into the new year and we're on the same page, because people laugh at us, because someone will tell Eric something and then I'll have a conversation with them like that day or the next day or some other time. They're like, do you guys even talk? Because I'm sharing new information with you that I gave your husband like 3 days ago. I'm like, listen, we do talk, and a lot of this doesn't get communicated because of life.
Right. Life happens.
Life happens.
But I love that you guys do this stuff, because I really do believe that, just like with our cars, we certainly schedule maintenance on our cars every year, whether it's to get an oil change or just rotate the tires, whatever. I feel like with relationships, it's no different. And I'd even like to take it a step further and say, beyond just romantic relationships, I think these kind of check-ins are helpful for all relationships in terms of friendships, like how I was just talking about. In 2022, there were a number of friendships that I allowed to have fall by the wayside or just kind of dissipate naturally, without sort of fighting that process. And while there's, certainly room for that to exist, I also feel like there's also a lot of room for those check-ins to exist, so that either it doesn't get to that point, or so that everyone can be on the same page regarding like what's going on, and there being kind of a mutual agreement on things.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's one of the reasons that I invited you to participate in the year in review process with me this year, right? And I think that's kind of what kicked off us joining this burning bowl ceremony, because in November I was like, hey, what if we did this together? And you and I talked about personal stuff, we talked about podcast stuff, like we just kind of had what did I tell you on Friday? It's very different to sit with yourself and do this review in a vacuum. When you choose to share it with someone else, you get a different perspective and you get to see things through a different lens.
A lot of accountability comes with that. And honestly, Amber, when you first asked me to do this, I was like, Amber would ask me to do this. And I love this idea because I've never had anyone hold me accountable for something like this. And while I certainly do my own forms of self-reflection on an ongoing basis, I've never really taken time to share out loud what those things are. But for 2022, another piece that I challenged myself with is to become more open and expressive about my personal life, and to be vulnerable in sharing my story. So like on social media, I'm more open about it. In the podcast, I really do try to share tidbits that seem relevant toward whatever it is that we're talking about. But it's something that I'm making an active, like a conscious decision and trying to shift into getting more comfortable with. And so for us to sit down and talk about lessons learned and these things together, it felt really good. It felt really good. And it's not something I could see myself initiating per se, had you not initiated it with me to experience.
Yeah. And I was grateful that you accepted. I mean, obviously I hold space. If you had said no, I wouldn't have been angry with you, but I'm glad that you said yes. I'm glad we got to do that together. And I think that it was further confirmation that we were supposed to be doing that when the burning bowl ceremony showed up at that time frame. And we're like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, all of this goes together. Like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is how
Mm-hmm.
we're supposed to close this chapter because, I think for both of us, one of the big things from this year is allowing this friendship to take root, right? Like,
Yes.
I mean, if you asked me in 2020 if Lindsay and I were going to be talking, let alone hosting a podcast together and like spending time together and being a huge part of each other's lives, 2020 Amber would have been like, no, I don't think so. Like, I wish her all the best, but no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean,
I
you would have
know.
said the same thing. I'm not alone in that. We weren't in that
Yeah.
space.
Mm-mm.
Um, so I think that being able to close the year and being able to experience that reflection together, I think that was meant to be. And I think it was a really good experience for me to get to share that with you because I haven't done a year in review with anyone other than Eric. Like,
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Wow. That's
like I
really
don't,
great. Yeah. Thank you,
this
Amber.
was like it was
It was
a
the
new
next
opening.
phase in our relationship.
Yes, that
It was
is true.
we were building deeper intimacy.
Yeah. Hey,
No, it
spoiler
was
alert, you can have intimacy with your friends that is not
oh,
like
of
sexual
course.
intimacy. Like, this is a layer of vulnerability. It's a layer of like being an actual human. So even
Well,
though, go ahead.
this podcast is just a huge part of our lives together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have a friendship outside of the podcast, but it is important for us to check in and kind of do that maintenance check of like, hey, how do we think this past year went? Because it was our first year of doing the podcast. So it's like, how do we think things went and what do we want to see more of? What worked, what didn't work? But what I loved is that when we met up, we weren't even focused on the podcast. So that was actually my favorite thing.
Yeah. I mean it evolved naturally and I got to see a different side of you that I typically don't get access to, right?
Mm,
Because things are so busy and we have so much going on. There's
yeah.
conversations that for me personally, I don't want to have like a deep heart conversation over the
Yeah.
phone. Like, first of all, I don't like talking on the phone first.
Also, we are now in a space where I can see you in person more.
Right.
And
Right.
so I agree in that sense, yeah. But I mean, I'll do the phone stuff, but I understand what you're saying. I,
Yeah, I don't like that's not I can't focus. If I can't see your face, like
yeah.
I can't make the emotional connection.
Yeah.
I can be
Yeah.
there with you, but being together in the same room and getting to walk down that path and actually visualize with you and,
Mhm.
get to um just get to experience life together. That was a great way to close out a chapter and to celebrate a year of podcasting and just ramp up for the next year because I mean all good
Yeah.
things are going to continue coming through this and I'm excited to see all of the guests that we get to have on, all of the topics we get to cover and just all of the goodness that comes out of doing this as a team.
Ditto. And speaking of, to our listeners, we really want to hear from you. We want to know
Mm.
what would you like to learn more about and what type of guest speakers do you want to hear from? We already have an incredible lineup set aside as it is. However, there are a few months that we are still kind of tinkering around trying to fill out, what topics make sense for that time of year or whatever. But we would love to hear from you. I mean, we have people from all walks of life who are scheduled to join us. I know in later this month, we're actually going to have someone come on to talk more about boundaries and the
Mm-hmm.
role of boundary setting and how to honor your own boundaries as a person,
Super
because that's
excited
something
for
that,
that.
right? Me
Yeah.
too. Me too. Because so much of the time we talk about like how to set boundaries with other people, but what about honoring the boundaries that you set within for yourself and honoring those? So yeah, we just have like a lot of neat speakers coming on. Someone from Harvard's trauma systems change workshops, trauma informed system change workshop. That's going to be really cool. We just have like neat people coming, but we'd love to hear from you in terms of y'all are our listeners. We want to keep you guys engaged and learning. As you know, Amber's a lifelong learner, so she kind of gets tossed into this.
I like it. It's
Yeah.
good. It keeps my brain nice and spongy.
It does. It does. So we definitely just want to hear from you. What's worked, what's not worked. That we want to ask you guys the same questions that we kind of did in our own year in review.
Absolutely. And I think that'll be something that we include in the show notes and something that we open up on social media just to hear, what you guys have to say, what you want to see more of, what new topics you want Lindsay and I to try to tackle and find fun people to chat with. So
Yeah.
that's
And
always.
speaking of,
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, speaking of, when you mentioned social media, sir, we have so many listeners that tune in, they're hearing us, they see our social media post, and then they might send us something in private to say, "Hey, I liked this," or they'll comment something in private. We would like to encourage you guys to try to get a little bit more comfy with posting it publicly, with commenting
Yeah.
publicly, because what y'all do not know, perhaps, is that changes our positioning in the algorithm within social media. So, in order to position ourselves to new listeners and to get more people on board with listen to the podcast, your comments, your likes, your shares, your saves, all that stuff actually gets calculated within the world of social media. And puts us in a space of kind of getting filtered upward so more people can learn about us. So please do us a favor and start being more vocal with your feedback. We would really, really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And please keep it coming because that is, it's nice to have that feedback loop. It's nice to know that our message is resonating. And it's nice to just hear from y'all because we do, obviously Lindsay and I are sitting here looking at each other on the computer screen. So we have that feedback loop and we just want to be able to take it to that next step and hear from you. I really appreciated this conversation. I think it's an excellent way to start off the year. I hope that someone is inspired to implement this, and I would encourage you, don't wait till next year to do your year in review. Go ahead and do it right now. It does not matter that it's, not December 31st or January 1st. You can do this anytime. But don't wait. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be a perfect day. Think like the stars are not going to align and say, today's the day.
Well, here's your
just
sign.
Gonna have to
We're
do the
giving
damn
it
thing.
to you.
Yeah, this is your sign, friend.
Yep. If you're looking for a sign, it's right here.
And I wanted to kind of close this episode a little differently because as a part of the burning bowl ceremony, there was a deck of cards that the yoga instructor had. And she said, feel free to pick one. If it speaks to you, take it home, hold on to it. I love how the message of the card that I received was like that final piece of, yes, Amber, your word of the year is trust. And like, this is like, stop fighting it because I do not like it. I'm going into this. I'm doing
such a nasty
it.
Face when I said that. When I said, I looked at Amber and I'm like, my intuition is telling you that your word is trust. The look she gave. Whew,
I shot
Lord.
daggers, friends.
I was gonna say daggers. I was like, you can get pissy with me, but
I know you're right.
This is your word.
It does. So I felt all the feelings when you said that word, which generally means you're going in the right direction, right? So the card that I picked up after the meditation and after the burning bowl says, true healing occurs when I give myself permission to feel whatever feelings live below the triggers. Yeah, that one, I was like, ooh.
That's it.
I don't know if you saw me when I picked the card up and looked at it as I'm sitting there by the burning bowl, but I was like, I kind of hung my head because I'm like, okay, message received.
Surprised she didn't throw that card into the fire while you were at it.
Oh, yeah, no.
I really liked my card as well. I don't have it in front of me, but it said, you are in alignment with the universe, or when you are in alignment with the universe when your peace cannot be disturbed or something like that. And I was like, oh yes, all the snaps on that one because
freedom.
Yes, that's how I was like, oh, I will claim that all day. It was it was a nice little ceremony, but I liked that she incorporated the oracle cards. That was kind of cool.
That was really cool. And I think there was so much intention behind that whole experience that it was just like, I felt it in my heart. I felt it in my soul. And I felt that that was just, it was very unique. So I thought it would be cool to end that today with just a little message and just to say thank you because obviously Lindsay and I wouldn't be able to celebrate our 1-year anniversary of podcasting without our incredible listeners. So we are very, very grateful, very thankful. And just stepping into the new year with gratitude and excitement, because I know some good things are headed our way.
Yes, they are, and they will continue. And 2023 is going to be an amazing year. I have no doubt about that. And I'd like to echo that sentiment. Thank you so much to our listeners. It has truly just been an honor to have this podcast and to have our listeners tuning in every week. It means the world to us. And we don't look at this podcast as a business. This is a podcast with a purpose. There is a high level of intention going on behind the scenes as to why we're doing this. And we thank you so much for being a part of this journey, for believing in us, and for sharing, not just this platform with others, but sharing other voices. The people that come on here, they share incredible stories, are incredibly vulnerable, and you help people feel heard and seen, and we see that and appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, I think we'll close it and just remind you, please follow us on all of the social media platforms, including YouTube, not Snapfish, but Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok. You can easily find us searching What the Fox Podcast.
But if you do want pictures, you can go to snapfish.com.
Yeah, not pictures of us though, because we're not on snapfish.com. But no. Neither here nor there. We're so grateful for you. We will see you next Tuesday.
Bye, guys.
And we all sing, everything is gonna be just fine. It's gonna fall into place. The sun is gonna set on your terrible day.